Okay, AB Scholars, we're going to be taking a look at the answers to question number 2 from the free response questions practice number 1. So this is the questions about the fuel depot and its fuel robot and its fuel tanks and list of fuel tanks. Hot dog. This is a tough question. The toughest question I think you've ever had in AP Comp Sci. I'm gonna just straight up say this is the toughest question that has ever been assigned to you. It's got a lot of different things going on, and even as I've like written my answer, I've actually rewritten my answer a couple times trying to like pare it down and make it as simple as possible. So yeah, tough one. So here's the deal with this question. Actually, we'll start with part A. Part A is going to take a look at the fuel depot's list of fuel tanks. It's going to return the index of the lowest tank that is below a particular threshold, and that threshold is sent as a parameter to the method. So this is the next tank to fill method, and it's going to look like this right here, next tank to fill. I'll show you what I got right here. Here's my public int next tank to fill. Just notice that, hey, I better return an int by the end of this. So if you don't have a return statement, then that's going to be a mark off right there. Excuse me. This is the threshold here. So I got to make sure that whatever I'm returning is less than the threshold. Or if there is no fuel tank that's less than the threshold, then the question asks you to return the robot's current index. I think that specifies it, right here. So remember, this is a method that we are writing inside of the fuel depot. So that's a method here, and in the fuel depot, the fuel robot is an instance variable, and so is the list of fuel tanks. So if I want to refer to the robot, I'm going to use the identifier filler. And if I want to refer to the list of tanks, I'm going to use the identifier tanks. That's my list. So keep those things in mind as you look at the solution to this problem. Whoa. There we go. So first of all, basically the problem is I'm going to use a loop. The solution is I use a loop to go through and I look for smaller fuel tanks, and if I find a smaller one, I record it and so on. Eventually I return the lowest index that I found. But here's the deal. When I first set this up, I want to set it up such that the index of the lowest tank, I'm going to set it to the filler's current index, the robot's current index. Because if I don't find something, oops, try again. If I don't find something in this for loop, that is the answer I'm supposed to give. So I don't have to do any messing around. Like if I don't change that value, if I never find anything, that's still going to be the value of index of lowest tank by the end. So I can just return it. That saves me some time, so I don't have to mess around with some if statements at the end or something like that. I'm just going to assume at the beginning there's no tank. And if I'm wrong, I'll correct it. And if I'm right, it'll still be there. So what is this lowest fuel value? Well, I'm just going to set it to threshold plus 1. Yeah. And I guess the reason I did that was I'm trying to think now if I should have just done the actual um, fuel tank of that one there. I think this is fine though. The reason I did that is because I'm guaranteed to beat that. There's no way I won't beat that unless there are no tanks that are below the threshold. In which case this is the winner anyways. But if there is any fuel tank that will beat is below the threshold, then I shouldn't choose this one, so that'll be good. And if it turns out it is the same one, then it's fine. I think I could have very well have just done the value of the filler, but I'm gonna go with this as my solution. So here's my for loop. So I'm gonna be iterating through my tanks list. So I'm gonna go from 0 to 1 less than tanks dot size, and I'm just gonna go up by 1 each time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm basically gonna get a tank, and then I'm going to ask the tank what is its fuel value, and then check to see, or just record that. That's our current fuel value. It's important that you don't do this. This is a really common thing. A lot of students make this mistake. They do tanks.getI, and then they store that as an int, or they try to use that like with less than or equal to statements. But the thing that we're getting is not an int. It is a fuel tank. We have to get the value out of the fuel tank. This is one of the hardest things about this question. So I'll just put that back. So the get fuel value is absolutely critical. So I call this current fuel value. And then what I do is I'm going to compare, hey, is this current fuel value less than or equal to the threshold? If it is, then it's up for consideration. And is the current fuel value less than the lowest fuel value I found? So, I want to make sure that I'm getting the smallest one, right? That's going to be the next one. So this will see if I beat the current lowest. If these are both true, if it's both below the threshold and lower than the lowest found so far, then I'm going to make a recording that this is my new lowest. So I'm going to record I as the index, the new index of the lowest tank. And I'm also going to remember the fuel value. So I'm going to change the lowest fuel value to whatever this tank's current fuel value is. I'm going to keep going though, because there might be a smaller one down the road. So this loop will just continue going. And by the end of this loop, I can guarantee that, if there was something that was smaller than the threshold and smaller than or equal to the threshold, it will have reassigned the value of lowest index of lowest tank. So then I can return it. And if it didn't find something, it's still going to be filler dot get current index. So either way, it solves the question. So that's my answer. I think the hardest thing is something like this. You don't have to do it in one line, by the way. You could do it in multiple lines. So if this multiple cascading dots is getting you down, you could have also done something like this. You could have saved the fuel tank. I'll call it ft tanks.getI, and then this could have been ft dot get fuel value. So this would have been an acceptable answer to the question as well. It does it on 2 lines, so it keeps the syntax a little bit cleaner, but you got more lines, so it's up to you what you think is the best way to do it. I think I'll leave the way I had it, and you guys can decide what you think. Another thing I'll just mention about the answer to this question is nowhere in the question does it say that the list has tanks in it. So what if there was no tanks? So this answer still resolves correctly. So if there were no tanks, then what I want to return is the robot's current index, which I'm not even sure what that would be. If there's no tanks, there's no valid index, but maybe the filler has like a special like -99 or something if there's no tanks in the list. In which case -99 would probably be the correct answer to return. And we don't know what that is supposed to be. We just know it's this. So I basically will do nothing. If the size is 0, then this loop will never run because I will start as 0 and 0 is not less than 0. So it'll never run and I'll just end up returning that. So this answer still works even if there are no tanks in the list. So this is why I like this answer. And that's part A. If you have any questions about this was a hard one. Oh, this was a hard one. So please feel free to ask more questions in the I almost said in the Discord, in the discussion area of Teams. Okay, so that's part A. Here's part B. Whoa, part B. Here's my answer. I'll show you the question just to remind you. You probably suffered through it and already have it memorized. But basically, it's this move to location question. It gives you a location as a parameter, and you need to move the robot. The robot's name is filler. Remember, you're writing it here. The robot's name is filler. So to tell the filler to do stuff, you have to refer to filler. And what can the filler do? Well, here is all the methods that are available for the fuel robots to do, including filler. So we can tell filler to get the current index, check to see if it's facing right, change its direction, and move forward. And move forward is going to be a big one. The problem is it can only move forward. So we have to change its direction and then move the right distance. That's the name of the game. So check out my answer. It's again, a tough one. Hard question. So here is my, oh, and first I'll just mention it's a void method. So you know that you don't have to return anything. The only reason you would return anything in a void method is to just abort the method. I don't think we'll need to do that at all in this question. So we're just not going to return anything if it's void. We just need to tell something to do some commands. In this case, it'll be filler. So here's my first step here. My first line of code is I'm going to determine the distance the filler needs to travel. So check it out. I am going to take the difference of the destination index, a lock index that I'm trying to get to, minus the filler's current index. So I have to say filler.getCurrentIndex. If you left off the filler, it's wrong. So, make that change because we're referring to an instance variable. We got to tell it. We're not in the, if we were in the robot class, in the fuel robot class, then we wouldn't have to say filler. But we are in the fuel depot class. So you have to refer to filler. Big distinction there. So I do this difference, but of course, if it's on the left or the right, it's going to be either positive or negative. So I use math.abs to take the absolute value so that I get just a pure scalar quantity, right? Just the actual distance. And then I record that in the int variable I call dist for distance. Woohoo! So that's going to be the distance I have to travel. The next set of if statements just determine whether or not I need to change direction. And then I move that distance. And if I'm already if I'm already facing the correct direction, then I just will end up moving that distance. And if I'm not, then one of these if statements will catch it and I'll change direction. Again, notice the filler.getCurrentIndex. Filler.is facing right. Filler.change direction. Filler.move forward. Very important to have that in there. Again, we're not writing our code inside of the fuel robot class, so we have to refer to, this is client code to the fuel robot class, so we have to refer to which fuel robot are we commanding. So in this case, it's filler. So I guess the first one here, I'm just checking to see if location is greater than the filler's current location. That means it's further down the right. So if it's further down the right and I am not facing right, I change my filler's direction. Woo, there we go. And else, I could just do another, if, but I did if else. It doesn't matter too much. In this case, I check, hey, if it's to the left, in other words, the destination is less than our current place, that means it's to the left. And, but I'm facing right. So if it's to the left and I'm facing right, tell the filler to change direction. If neither of those is true, it's already facing the right direction. And if I'm already at the destination, then my dist will be 0, so it doesn't really matter what I do if I tell it to move forward with 0. And then I say filler.moveForward dist. So I'll be facing the right direction. I've calculated the correct distance. It should move me there. There was a thing in the question that said, hey, better make sure you don't go off the end of the fuel line. What is it? Yeah, do not move the robot past the end of the line of fuel tanks. But guess what? There's a precondition here. Preconditions are basically things you can assume are true before the method runs. And it says that location index is basically a valid index. It's going to be a valid location in the list of tanks. We can assume that. It's a precondition. So I don't know what to say. If you did some elaborate checking, you would have struggled because if you move forward just 1 and then checked it and 1 and had some loop going on, yeah, that was misleading in the question, and you might have. I could totally see how you would have made that mistake. So that's why it's not necessary. It's just because the precondition of the question assumes that you're not ever going to go off the edge. You can't. It's never going to happen. This is never going to be a thing like that. Anyways, there you go. There's answers to question 2, part A and B. Hardest question we've assigned in the year. Thank you so much for doing it. I don't expect anyone necessarily to even fully understand every detail about these answers. So spend some time looking over these answers. You can watch the video again. You could, I'll have these uploaded in text form on the team's website. Look these over, think about them, and let me know if you have more questions about it, because man, those are tough ones. Tough, tough, tough. Okay, thanks for your hard work, AP Scholars. You're doing great. Keep on practicing. I'll talk to you later. Bye.